This is the state that most people call Ohio. However, its scientific name is Heavenus Unearthicus. It is surrounded by the land where the band Rush came from to the north, Kid Rockistan and Fago also to the north, Who Cares to the west, which is a state that is so boring it doesn't get a fun description, Fried Chicken to the south, a state that literally only exists because it didn't want to be part of the Confederacy, but for some reason has more Confederate flags than regular Virginia to the southeast, and the Amish part of Pennsylvania directly east. Ohio is known as the Buckeye State for its plethora of buckeye trees, which are so called because the nuts look like the eyes of bucks. I know, who could have guessed it? There's a university that uses the Buckeyes as their moniker, but I much prefer Ohio University, which is represented by bobcats, and I would petition to change their name to the Bobcat State. But this video isn't about that. Instead, draw your attention to the Cuyahoga River, which is marked on the map. It's located in northeast Ohio and flows through the Factory of Sadness itself, also known as Cleveland. The Cuyahoga is interesting because it flows north, but that really isn't that interesting at all. It's just that most rivers in the U.S. flow south. It does this because to the north is Lake Erie, which is the smallest Great Lake by volume, but ranks 4 out of 5 in terms of surface area. The only reason why the Great Lakes are known as lakes instead of seas is the fact that they are freshwater opposed to being saltwater. Now, with climate change and everything, you'd think more people would want to live in an area with plentiful fresh water, but no, instead they keep moving to Arizona. But this isn't about that. This is about the Cuyahoga River. Now, what actually makes the Cuyahoga interesting is that it caught fire. More accurately, it's caught fire a minimum of 13 times. This is a drawing I did based off of the last major fire that occurred on the river in 1969. How does a river catch fire, you might ask? Well, if you go back to 1964, in that magical year, you'd find that Cleveland had nothing but major factories, jobs, and a world-class football team. Nowadays, you find far fewer factories, a job situation that actually isn't as sad as it used to be, and a football team I'm jinxing by claiming they finally turned it around. But no, the Cleveland Browns are known for ruining many people's Sundays. I'm distracted. Let's focus on the factories. They create a lot of pollution. Pollution that was dumped into the rivers. Polluted products that just so happen to be flammable. No doubt my grandfather, who was living in Cleveland at the time, helped contribute to this problem. He didn't work at a factory, though. He just liked dumping oil into the river for fun. He found it exciting. Okay, so that's a lie. He was actually a factory worker at the Glidden Paint Factory who no doubt contributed to this problem. I'm kidding about him maliciously dumping stuff. Mom, please don't be mad at me for making up stuff about my grandfather. The thing is that river fires aren't an exclusive phenomenon to the Cuyahoga. If you Google river fires, you can find plenty of examples. River fires happen anywhere where people are dumping flammable products into the rivers. Sometimes this is because of things like coal dust or even oil refinery byproducts. The Schuylkill River, if that's how you say it, in Pennsylvania lit up in the 1800s due to the amount of coal dust being dumped into the river. Another fact I know is that Pennsylvania used to be the oil-producing capital of the world. This was before the automobile came onto the scene, so the only product people were interested in was the kerosene being used to light their oil lamps. This meant that other products like gasoline would be dumped into the river because they had no use for it, which, as you can imagine, isn't good for anyone. While there are plenty of other river fire examples, the Cuyahoga was certainly a major symbol of the problem we had on our hands in the United States and is often cited as one of the major examples of why the federal government needed to step in and start regulating pollution. The first step toward cleaning up the waters in America started with the creation of the Environmental Protection Agency, or EPA, which was of course founded by the ardent, progressive liberal... Wait, Richard Nixon? Yes, that's right. Richard Nixon of Watergate infamy did what would seem unthinkable to any modern-day Republican and start a new government agency that was devoted to doing something about problems that exist in society. Later on in 1972, Congress would pass the Clean Water Act, which was dedicated to cleaning up our various lakes, streams, wetlands, and rivers. As you might be able to tell from my drawing, I'm still not a fan of Richard Nixon. But this was a majorly important creation and led to a lot of good in terms of improving the health of U.S. waters, as well as public health in general. One question we should always keep in mind, though, is whether or not we are solving problems surrounding pollution or simply pushing them elsewhere. For example, in 2014, a section of the Mayu River in Wenzhou in eastern China caught on fire after someone reportedly threw a lit cigarette into the river. The river was filled with oil and other various chemicals that were being produced by factories upstream and then dumped. Because China and other countries often have more relaxed anti-pollution laws, companies were incentivized to use factories where they could dump more freely, meaning that we didn't necessarily eliminate the pollution, but we outsourced it. Good news, though, for anyone who was hoping that some of that pollution would be coming back to the United States, because the current Supreme Court has been working hard on dismantling regulations around environmental protections. A recent example was the 2023 case Sackett v. EPA, which was a 5-4 ruling that decided that wetlands weren't covered by environmental protections if they weren't directly connected to a body of water. The Clean Water Act stated that the, quote, waters of the United States, end quote, were under protection of the law. Polluters have been arguing forever, though, about what qualifies as a water of the United States. The ruling from Samuel Alito stated that, quote, any wetland that does not connect at its surface to another body of federally protected water doesn't merit the same degree of protection, end quote. This, of course, doesn't make sense because groundwater is a thing, which means you don't have to have a direct connection on the surface to a different body of water for that water to get polluted via groundwater. I don't know, I guess Samuel Alito lacks logic permanence and doesn't understand that things exist even when he can't see them. I want to address something before you point it out. Yes, my drawings below are very crude and the robes aren't all colored in. I'm a newbie artist who made the mistake of writing snarky political messages on the robes in black first before coloring in their robes. Sue me over it. Let's just say the white robes represent their white supremacist views or something. Yes, I'm including Clarence Thomas because, let's face it, he's basically Uncle Ruckus as the Supreme Court Justice. You might also notice that Brett Kavanaugh actually joined the dissent in this case, which was surprising to see. But don't worry, he recently made up for his correct ruling by joining the majority in the case Loper Bright Enterprises v. Raimondo, which ended the Chevron deference standard. This is a standard that meant that when a law was ambiguous, its interpretation would be deferred to the governing body that helps formulate policy decisions. This was another win for major polluters because now the courts can basically strike down any pro-environmental policies they want because they're literally owned by billionaire donors. Now, ironically, Brett Kavanaugh's mother, who is still alive at the time of this video, was instrumental in creating the Chevron deference standard. I can only imagine how awkward Thanksgiving will be if it comes up that he helped destroy part of her legacy. Anyway, if you want to hear more about the Chevron deference, find a better YouTube channel. Now, what does this ultimately mean for the Cuyahoga River and Lake Erie? Well, I'm not exactly sure, but I'd wager that our air, water, and ground will start becoming less clean than it already is. If we do get so bad, though, that the Cuyahoga River and by extension Lake Erie start exploding again, my only suggestion is that we rename those places to reflect the current environmental conditions. That's why I would suggest we rename Lake Erie the Michael Bay, because like a Michael Bay movie, everything would be exploding all the time for no good reason. The explosions would be pretty entertaining, though, even if they never got anything above a 68% rating on Rotten Tomatoes. Anyway, that's the joke this entire video has been leading up to. I hope you found the video informative. I still also need to learn how to properly draw an explosion, but I think Optimus Prime looks pretty good. Yeah? No? Alright. Please like, share, subscribe if you enjoyed the video. Your support means a lot to me. Later.